let's talk about different ways how we can control the loop. And one way would be to use break. The break stops the loop execution. So we can use it in the cases where we don't want to continue with the loop for whatever reason. And here is an example. So basically, if we want to draw it, we can draw it like that. So we have come into the loop, and the loop maybe has a condition, or we have a for loop or while loop, it doesn't matter actually. And let's say there is a condition. This condition, it can be for loop, then the condition would be that whether there are more elements. And if it's true, we go into the loop, there is a body. And let's say there's like a first part of the body, maybe one statement, maybe even 0 statements, but this is the first part of the body. And then we have a possible break. And this is like a condition. And if we do have break in our code, then we get out of this code if it's true. If it's false, we don't have break in our code, then we can, maybe there are some other code to execute and so on, the other part of the body. Now we go back to this loop head, where we also again check the condition. If the condition is false, then we end the loop. So this can be a small drawing how the break works. So basically, we can see also from the code, we have a list of names, and we loop the names. So this is basic for loop. We take elements out of the list. The first one is the name. The element from the list is stored into a variable name, and then we print out. For every element, we print out that this name is analyzed currently, and if the name starts with M, then we print out that we have found a name which starts with M, and we break. So what happens? If we come into this program or this loop, we first have Frodo. So it starts with F. We take this into a variable name, and we print out that we are analyzing Frodo. So this is our printout. In printout, we have analyzing Frodo, but because it doesn't start with M, we ignore this if sentence, and we take the second one, Mary. We print out that we are analyzing Mary, and now the if condition is true. So the name starts with M. And now we print out that this starts with M, and we break. The break means that we go out from the loop. We don't take any more elements. As you can see, in the end, there is another name starting with M, but we don't get there because we broke out from the loop. For example, if the exercise or the problem we want to solve here is that find the first element or first name which starts with M, then if you find one, there's no point to go over the whole list of elements. So the first one I found, I can break the loop and I can continue with my code. So here is the printout for this code. We have this, we are analyzing Frodo, then we are analyzing Mary, and because this name starts with M, we don't go any further. So there is no more analyzing Pippin and so on. And the first name starting with M is found. Let's see else. Else can be used along with the loop, and this part is executed if the loop body doesn't have break inside, or if the break was not executed. So here is an example. We used basically the same code as previously. We take the names and we use the else part here. So this is written after the loop. It can be also for while loop, it doesn't matter. And this body of this else is executed only if the break was not executed. So why is it important, or why is it convenient to have this else part in this code? Is that, for example, if there are no elements which start with A, currently we are looking for elements which start with A because there are none. If we find one element, then the break is executed and we go out from the loop. We go out also from this else part, we don't execute it. But if we reach to the end of this for loop and we haven't executed the break, then we go into this else part. And in the given example, if we reach there, we know that we haven't used the break, which means we haven't found any names which start with A, and therefore we can say that there are no elements or no names which start with A. Most or some of the programming languages don't have this mechanism to kind of find out whether we were using break or not. So it's, if you start using it and get used to it, it's inconvenient in some other languages where it doesn't exist. So you have to maybe do some additional variable which gets a value if the name is found, and after you have to check whether this variable was set, and based on that you can say that whether we found a name or we didn't find a name. So it's actually quite convenient thing to use. It's not used too often, but it's nice to know that you have this opportunity to use this else part if you want to know whether this loop executed without breaking. And yeah, its current example shows that there are no names starting with A. So if the break is not used, else is executed. If the break is used, then the else part is not executed. Else can be also used with while loop. So here we have an example where the user tries to enter a password. Currently the correct password is secret. This is not the way to actually do the password checking. You cannot have plain text passwords and so on. But basically what happens is that our condition is whether the tries, the number of times the user has tried to enter the password, is smaller than 3. And with this input line we ask the user input. So basically we get user text, or what the user enters from the keyboard, we get into this password variable. Now if the password is secret, then we print out that this is correct and we break out from the loop. So we know that the break was executed, the password was correct, and we can continue with our code. If it's not correct, then we increase the tries. So the tries value will become 1. So there's another possibility to enter the password. If it's still incorrect, then the tries will get value 2, which is still smaller than 3, so you can still enter a password. And if you enter the wrong password for the 3rd time, then the tries will become 3, and this while condition is false. Now, because we haven't used break, we get into this else part, and we can say that, yeah, you have entered the password for a wrong password for 3 times. Now we are locking the computer, or whatever we can do here. So this is one way to use it, but it doesn't matter whether we use while loop here or for loop here. You can use else part to execute some code in the case when the loop finished normally without using break. In addition to the break, there is also continue, which can be used to control the loop execution. So the continue continues with the next iteration step. And here is an example. Basically, what I can draw the similar drawing here. So basically, we still have this condition, which states whether we go into loop or not. Then we have some statements then we can use continue. I put it also as a conditional. Okay. So if we have continue here, then instead of breaking as we did here, we draw the line here and it goes back to the head of the loop. Here we can have some other code, and after the end of the loop body we go back anyway. So if there is no continue, we go here, false. If there is continue, we go back to the header of the loop and check the condition again. And if this condition itself is false, then we end the loop. So as you can see, with break, we end the execution of the loop. With continue, we just go and take the next element. And here is an example. We have a list of numbers. We have a loop, for loop, where we take the values of the numbers and we check whether the number is even number. So if I divide it by 2, whether the remainder is 0. So every even number, if I divide it by 2, it can have a remainder either 0 or 1. So if I divide it and there is nothing to remain, or there is no remainder, then this means that the value can be divided by 2, or it's an even number. And if it is an even number, then we continue, which means that we go and take the next element. If it's not, then we don't go into this code and we just execute the rest of the loop body and print out that it is an odd number. So if I take 1, the check gives us, the check is false, so I can draw it here. So I have a list of numbers. First I come in with the element 1. So there is the before part, there is maybe the condition itself is this body 1, or the first part of the loop. So here I check whether the number 1 module 2 is 0. Because 1 divided by 2 gives us remainder 1, then this is false. And then we don't go into continue and we go into this P2 sentence. So basically what this condition here means, that whether there is a continue in my code. In the case where the if sentence is false, then we don't have this continue in our code, or we don't execute this line and we continue with our body. So we execute this print line and we print out that the odd number is 1. Then I take the next one, 2. I come here, take the element of 2, and now I check whether 2 is even number. Because it's true, it goes into this if condition body and continue is executed, and now we go and take the next element, which is 4, which is also an even number. So we again continue. 5 is not an even number, so we don't do continue, we print out it as pointed out here that it's an odd number, and so on. So we get as the result, we get odd numbers 1, 5 and 9. And the code reaches to print if the continue is not executed. So we reach here if the continue is not executed. So in the case where the number is odd, then we reach to this print. And if it's not an odd number or it is an even number, then we execute the continue or we take the next element. So to control the loop, we have several ways. One is to use break. Break ends the loop. So if I'm, for whatever reason, I don't want to loop anymore, there's no point to take other elements. For example, if I want to find the first name which starts with A, if I have found one, I can break out from the loop, because there is no point to see which one comes after the first one, because we only want to see the first one. And in some cases we want to use continue, although the continue is not used so often. And instead of continue, you can actually just have an if condition there. So you execute this part of the code only in certain conditions. And if you don't want to execute it, then after B1, you go back to the next element. So the continue is not so often used, but it's nice to know. And in some ways, it can make your code easier to read. So you can, in certain cases, you can say continue, then it's easily understandable that you don't care about the rest of the body. You want to take the next element from the loop.